Welcome, everyone. We'll start in, let's say, 2 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the COPSS-NISS Leadership Webinar Series. So a little bit about myself. My name is Anru Zhang. I'm currently Associate Professor at Duke, Department of Biostatistics, Bioinformatics, as well as Department of Computer Science. I also serve as Associate Chair for Research at Duke Biostatistics and Bioinformatics. Here's a little bit background. I spent a few wonderful years as assistant professor in the Department of Statistics at UW-Madison. I got my PhD degree in UPenn in 2015 and a bachelor's degree from Peking University in 2010. So you may wonder why am I here? Yeah, I was really fortunate to be selected as one of 8 members of the 2024 class of the COPSS Emerging Leadership Academy. So just to give you a little bit of background, COPSS is short for Committee of Presidents of Statistical Societies. COPSS is made up of various statistical societies, including ASA, ENAR, WINAR, IMS, SSC, and together with a lot of, say, friendly societies, including Bernoulli, CWS, IBS, ICSA, IISA, ISBA, ISI, KISS, NISS, RSS, and SSA. And the society was across the whole universe. The COPSS bestows many awards each year, including the COPSS Emerging Leadership Award. And the purpose of this award is to recognize early career statistical scientists who show evidence of potential leadership. It also provides a mechanism to share our vision of leadership into the field. From this emerged this webinar series, which is co-organized by COPSS as well as NISS, National Institute of Statistical Sciences. And these webinars are forums that provide opportunity to feature leaders in our society throughout the discipline, and we want to invite them to tell their stories, their leaderships, and their experience, and share their insights. And in our webinars, after the leaders share their stories, experience, and we'll have Q&A sessions. And should you have any questions for our leaders, please ask them using the chat box. This is only one webinar out of the series, and for more webinars within this series, and you can check out this webpage for details. All right, so Today, we're going to discuss about the leadership in linking statistical theory and the scientific inquiries. So in our professions, many of us, especially junior researchers, at least myself, feel like we have to face within a metaphoric fork and load, where we believe that we must choose between pursuing a more theoretical research or focusing on more applied research. But however, in today's area, the line between these two areas becomes increasingly blurred. As a result, careers are emerging that draw strengths, say, between both the theoretical and the applied research, and some leaders are really good at them and seemingly integrating the two. And today, we're fortunate to have two of them to share their stories about how they are successful straddle between the line of the theoretical research and the scientific inquiries. And they are, first of all, Michael Kosorok. Michael Kosorok is currently the W.R. Kennan Jr. Distinguished Professor of Biostatistics and Professor of Statistics and Operation Research at the UNC Chapel Hill. And he has been chair for a long time at the Department of Biostatistics at the UNC Chapel Hill from 2006 to 2016, as well as 2017 to 2020. And he is the president-elect president, then the past president for IMS from 2022 to 2025. Michael won numerous awards, including COPSS, the George Snechter Award, the Node Distinguished Scholar Award, IMS Mandela Lecturer, keynote or distinguished speakers at numerous conferences and departments. And I feel personally really related to Michael because we both spent a significant time at UW Medicine before. He was at the Department of Statistics and the Department of Biostatistics. On top of that, Michael also serves on data safety monitoring boards, committees, and engages in various national, international, say, professional service activities. And another leader we want to feature is Daniela Witten. Daniela is the winner of the 2023 COPSS Presidential Award and the 2019 Spiegelman Award from the American Public Health Association. She also won numerous awards, including SF Korea, Simon's Investigator Award, NIH Director's Early Independence Award, Sloan Fellowship, and so on and so forth. And she has done a lot of editorial services. Most prominently, she is currently the editor-in-chief for Journal of Royal Statistical Society, Series B. She also co-authored a very, very popular textbook, Introduction to Statistical Learning, and this book has been used as a textbook in a lot of places. So without further ado, and I would just want to turn my attention to Michael and Daniela. And Michael, can you go first and to share us your experience?
Happy to. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, so I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for Anru and for inviting me. I'll talk a little bit about my leadership journey. Probably just my journey in general to begin with a little bit. So first off, statistics was not my initial career trajectory. I have a bachelor's in music composition. That's my only bachelor's degree. It was my original career plan. Later in my bachelor's, I decided I should probably get a master's in statistics to make sure that I had some income while I was trying to be a composer. And I also took pre-med courses because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do sometimes. And I liked a lot of those things. I then discovered biostatistics. It's a nice combination of these two fields. And I liked statistics enough, I decided to do a PhD and got a master's too at University of Washington, combined two of my strong interests. And then I did a 6-month postdoc in 1992. And then I was, as Anru mentioned, assistant associate full professor at UW-Madison, Department of Statistics, Biostatistics. I also had an affiliate appointment in pediatrics. While I was there, I worked on a master's in music composition. I still was thinking about how I would integrate composition back into my statistics plans. And this was just after I started while I was working on tenure. I got tenure in 1998 as a part-time master's degree. But since that time, I focused for the intervening decades primarily in statistics and biostatistics and related areas. And in 2006, I was recruited to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill to become chair of Biostatistics department. Even though I was very focused on research, which I think is a good thing, I had the sense that I could, from a selfish point of view, that I could learn a lot about other people and their research and outside of my own field, and I could get more exposed to a lot of other ideas. And so I was very interested in the leadership aspects, but I was also interested in the opportunities that this would give me for learning. So I became the department chair and professor of biostatistics. I became a professor in the joint appointment in statistics and operations research in 2007. Became a distinguished professor in 2013. And just this September 1, I became the director for the Gilling Schools, that's the public health school here, Center for AI and Public Health. And so I've had some academic leadership experience, still working in that aspect along with my research. Some professional society leadership experience. Being editors for journals, I think is a very good experience to learn and see how people organize papers, and I just think it's a very important service. So I was associate editor for Annals of Statistics for a very long time, also Journal of the American Statistical Association and JRSSB, among other journals. I had the privilege of being guest editor for the JASA Theory and Method special issue on precision medicine, came out in 2021. I've also done a lot of organization committees, session organization, awards committees, including the COPSS President's Award Committee. And most recently, I was president-elect, president last year, and now I'm past president of IMS, which has really been an excellent experience, one that I've really enjoyed, what I've learned from so many other people.
Yeah, Michael, may I ask if you are prepared, you are using your slides?
Yes.
We cannot see your slides.
Oh, okay, what's going on here, I wonder? Let's see if I can fix this. Just a moment. I wonder what happened to that. Okay, let me try this. Can you see any slides?
Yes, now I can see it.
Okay, thank you. I had been using slides. My apologies, I didn't know. I must have, we tried this before this started and it worked, but somehow I did something wrong. So anyway, so here's the slides I've already been through. Talking about professional society leadership experience just now. I also just want to mention another important part of my career has been working with PhD students and other students, as well as just general mentoring and teaching. So I have about 63 PhD students that I've worked on in my career so far. I have 9, and a 10th postdoc will be joining me in November. And I mentored many junior faculty in a number of roles, but in particular when I was department chair. And this is really one of the most rewarding parts of my career. I've also taught a lot of classes. I actually taught a large percentage of them are theory courses, but I've taught introductory basic courses. And one course that bridges the two, I taught for many years when I was at Wisconsin-Madison. And then I introduced a variation of that course when I became department chair here at UNC. And this is on how to be an effective collaborator. It came out of an original course was on statistical consulting, which I don't know about you, but when I was a graduate student, that was not a very inviting topic to me. But collaboration, on the other hand, I feel is really enjoyable. And so we don't focus on transient, short-term statistical work, but building longer-term collaborations, how to write papers, how to write grants, how to communicate to people and listen to them well and be effective as a team researcher. I just mentioned I have a book on empirical processes. That was also a good experience. I teach a course related to that here at UNC from time to time. Another course I co-edited with Erica Moody on dynamic treatment regimes, precision medicine. My work publications are in foundational theory, statistical methods, as well as collaborative research in biomedicine. So I have a lot of those. For many years, my most highly cited paper was not in human health. It was on reproductive management of dairy cattle. This was just a random consulting opportunity that came to me, collaboration when I was at Wisconsin. Some friend of mine who was in dairy science asked me, hey, we have this issue. And I thought, that sounds like survival data. To my surprise, nobody in the entire field of dairy science had heard about survival analysis. So it was wide open for this. But our paper showed definitively that the particular treatments they were comparing were very, very different. I've worked in a lot of different areas, cellular level, human level, population level, molecular level, health research in cancer, cystic fibrosis, pediatrics, nutrition, diabetes, arthritis, chronic pain, asthma, and others. I will say that cancer and cystic fibrosis I've spent a lot more time in than some of the others, but I've been working in many areas and I like collaborating with a lot of people I work with. So another thing I want to mention is this, one of the other experiences in leadership. As a biostatistician, I served on several data safety monitoring committees. And these are very, very interesting opportunities. And where we work with a team of scientists to monitor a clinical trial or clinical study to make sure it's safe and that the science is going well and that people are being recruited successfully. It meets its aims. I was chair of the intramural DSMB for the U.S. National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. They had about 20 some protocols, clinical trials, and other studies that were under our purview. That was very interesting. Most of the stuff that we do in these are confidential, but they eventually come out. One of the interesting things I think was we had one study where as we were monitoring it, we discovered that the treatment was actually harming patients. And so we had a big press were there. We were one of the auditoriums at NIH, and our committee was, and I'm kind of shy around lots of people, but we gave this presentation. It was really, really impactful, but it was not something anybody ever see. It would never show up in a publication per se. But it did have the work is very, very important. I think that I want to just say that my philosophy is that theory, methods, and applications are all very important. For me, throughout my career, applications have inspired theory and vice versa. Theory has really inspired applications. This is particularly true in some of my work in precision medicine and the work of my collaborators. And I also want to mention that we should never downplay the role of curiosity. I feel that I've enjoyed what I've done largely because, for the most part, curiosity has been a driving factor. I also want to mention that just because something is hard doesn't mean you can't become excellent at it. And I also want to say that imposter syndrome is a healthy, normal part of being a successful researcher and leader. In fact, if you don't ever have it, I think you're not paying attention to reality. But I do want to say that you probably feel those at some time or another, but they're all healthy things. And it's important to work through them and focus on being our best selves. So that's all.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now, Daniela, it's your turn. Would you like to share us your experience?
Sure, thanks. I just want to say, Michael, I completely agree with what you said about imposter syndrome. And I'm so curious when I talk to people and they tell me that they don't have imposter syndrome because it's like, really? Like you don't? I think we should do a study on the people who say they don't have imposter syndrome because they have something very interesting going on, I think. Okay, great. Am I sharing my screen correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah. So hi, this is such a nice honor to be able to speak to you all today. And I really loved hearing what Michael talked about because I think there were a lot of similarities between what he said and what I want to say. So I think one of the things that I want to say is that, like, if I think about my career trajectory, it seems like a very linear path. Like, I was at Stanford for undergrad. I majored in math and biology. I did my PhD in statistics still at Stanford. I went straight to UW the same month that I graduated as faculty, got tenure, and then have been in my current position since 2018. And I think it's very easy when you're looking from the outside at someone's trajectory to think that it was like so linear and that there were no bumps and that it was like completely obvious how things were going to play out. But when you're the actual person, it feels a lot less certain. So, just as an example, like in college, I had no idea what I was going to major in. I double majored in math and biology because I like literally could not figure out what on earth to do. And I thought, like, here's two things that I kind of both like. Okay. So maybe if I like each of them okay, then and I do two of them, then that'll be good. I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I ended up doing a PhD in statistics literally because I had the prereqs. And I stayed at Stanford because it was like, well, this way I don't have to move. And then I got a job at UW and I was like, ooh, like Seattle. I want to live in Seattle. And so I took this job at UW. So I think the point of what I'm saying here is people often come to me and they're like, how did you know from such a young age what you wanted to do? And the answer is I didn't. I just mucked through every step of the way. But eventually, if you kind of muck through for long enough, then in retrospect, it looks like you knew what you were doing. And that's if you get one take home from me, then that's it. Which is just keep on mucking through, and then it'll look like you had a really organized plan. So, my professional accomplishments, my research is in statistical learning with applications. So I'm not a theorist at all. I'm interested in like methods research, but for me, the methods research is really motivated by a clear understanding of like what are the problems that scientists are facing. Often the applications are in genomics or neuroscience, but I'm sort of open to interesting questions that arise. Um, I know this is a webinar on the intersection between theory and application. So I've had methods funding from NIH and NSF throughout my career, um, which sort of I think reflects the balance in what I do. My greatest pride and joy are my students. Michael, I can't believe you've graduated 55 students. That's incredible. I've graduated 9 students. But one thing I take a lot of pride in is that they've all been incredibly successful. Like of the 9 students, 7 are now either tenure track or tenured faculty, and the other 2 decided they didn't want that path, but like, they could have had it. I have postdocs who are tenure track faculty. So the numbers are small, but truly it's in part because my students are my proudest professional accomplishment. And I just really feel like if a student's going to work with me, then I want to be able to, I don't know, help them in every way that I can and provide the mentoring to really help them be successful. And I'll also say the other side of that is that the reason I have been successful in my career is because I've had these incredible students. I mean, they really are like the engine that's driven my research since I became faculty. um, so teaching, one thing that I did was I designed a data science master's degree at UW. Actually, at this point, almost 10 years ago. That's been a really successful program that's involved a collaboration between around 7 departments, including statistics, computer science, applied math, biostat, human-centered design, and engineering. So that was a really big push that's been really fruitful. I've designed a lot of new courses in data science and statistical learning. And then sort of my proudest teaching accomplishment is that I'm a co-author of the textbook Introduction to Statistical Learning, which is often used as a sort of like a advanced undergrad or early master's level text on statistical machine learning. And then finally, in terms of service, currently I'm serving as joint editor of Journal of the Royal Statistical Society Series B, which has just been such a humbling experience and also like a really big career honor for me. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I've also had other roles in the community. So I was an elected member of the IMS Council up until a few months ago. I chaired the IMS Diversity Committee, which was really meaningful for me. Actually, I think Michael was the one who asked me if I'd be willing to chair it. So thanks, Michael. And I've served on committees for the national academies. Um, and I've also had sort of internal service roles within my department as associate chair and that type of thing. Okay, so what I've learned, I think I've learned a lot. So I'm just going to summarize here. So one thing I've learned is that you are your own worst critic. And so I suggest that you make a choice to be less critical because you think about your own shortcomings much more. Very likely you think about them more than other people think about them. And you can just be happier if you just, are less critical of yourself. Your papers will never love you back. I mean, I love my papers, and I mean, not every paper, but a lot of them I really love and I'm very proud of. But they don't love me because they're papers. They're just words in a PDF. So if you want to be loved back, you should invest in your personal life. And I think that I can't overstate enough the importance of that. One thing I've learned is you don't need to get all of your mentoring from one person. So I sort of had this vision when I was younger that like the way that mentorship works is that you have one person and they're your mentor with a capital M, and that's your mentor. And they just guide you through and they just shepherd you through the process of your career. And that's their job because they're your mentor with a capital M. And for a long time in my career, I sort of felt like it was very hard for me not having that capital M mentor. And then what I realized sort of as I've gotten older is that's not really how it works. Like you don't need to have one mentor who gives you everything. There can be different people in your life who mentor you in different ways. And it doesn't need to be like a very intensive mentoring process. It can kind of be even an offhand conversation can count as mentoring. So like I remember, when I was I don't know, maybe early faculty, maybe 2012, I was giving a talk at Purdue. I had been invited by Rebecca Dirge, who at the time was the department head there. And she made some incredibly offhand remark that I'm sure she doesn't remember making, but it stuck with me for 12 years. And like that counts as mentoring. It was like a really insightful remark that she made 12 years ago. I think it was like I was telling her I was writing a paper that I wasn't that excited about. And, I didn't really know if I should push through or if I should just do something else. And she was like, well, not every paper is going to be your best. It was something like that, very offhand, but it's like that counts as mentoring. And when I've been able to reframe my life experiences in that way, where I realize that I've actually gotten a ton of mentoring, not all from one person, then that allows me to be like super grateful for all the wonderful mentoring I've received from the senior people around me. Okay, here's a big one. Took me a long time to figure out, which is that nobody knows what they're doing. So when I was a grad student, I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And I can see that the other grad students don't know what they're doing, but I bet the assistant professors know what's up. And then I became an assistant professor. And it's like, oh my God, nobody knows what they're doing here. But presumably once you get tenure, that's when you figure it out. And then I was associate professor and I was like, okay, well, it turns out associate professors are clueless, but probably the full professors know. And all the way up. And then it turns out actually nobody knows what they're doing. And what I mean by that is like we're all facing the same insecurities, the same uncertainties. And it's not like you get to a point in your career where like you have it 100% dialed in and you just like, you know what you're doing and you're completely confident. Instead, it's just like the reality of the human experience is to just be mucking our way through. And if you realize that that's the reality of the human experience, then that can help you like build confidence in your own decisions. Here's one thing that I feel really strongly about, which is like this career is supposed to be fun, because wherever you are in your career, you have a very, very valuable skill set. You're very good at statistics. You have a lot of technical strengths. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, then like do a different thing because life is short and you only get to do this once. And I don't mean that every moment of every day should be fun. I mean, of course, we all have days where we're like, responding to reviewer comments or whatever it is, whatever is your least favorite part of the job. Of course, we all have days like that. But like overall, this job, whatever career stage you're in, should be fun and meaningful to you. And then if not, like maybe find something else that's more fun and more meaningful for you because this is truly a privilege. And I think about that a lot in my job at this stage in my career. Like if I'm doing something that I don't like if I'm spending a day doing something that I'm not enjoying, then I try to think about like, well, what is it that I don't like about this? And like, is it a collaboration that I said yes to that I maybe shouldn't have said yes to? Or did I agree to give a talk that I wasn't excited about? Not this one. I'm excited to be here. But it's just worth considering, because you only have this one life, and we have so much flexibility in our jobs as statisticians. And so it's worth figuring out how it can be fun for you. And maybe that means a different research focus, or maybe that means a job outside of academia, but I just think it's worth making sure you're having fun doing it. And then finally, the last thing I want to say is that another thing I've learned is that successful people are the ones who keep at it for long enough. And that really has to do with what I was saying about how I feel like my experience, even though it looks linear, like it's only linear in hindsight. Like, I mucked my way through undergrad and grad school, and I'm still mucking my way through. But in retrospect, you look very successful if you've done it for a long time. And I'll say a similar thing about like my cohort in grad school. I think that we all were just like flying by the seat of our pants. And now all of my cohort from grad school, every single one of them is like an incredibly successful statistician. And again, it's because like time passes and you keep at it, and that's how you become successful. So that's just like a message of encouragement for people who are earlier in their careers, and you look at these people ahead of you and you're like, how did they do all that? It's like, just keep swimming, because you will also be very accomplished. So anyway, I have a lot of thoughts, and I have a column in the IMS bulletin that contains thoughts like these. So if you're interested in hearing more of these tidbits, then you can go to my website, and there's a little link on the top right for my IMS columns. Okay, so I just want to just tell a final note, which is like a sort of a couple of little anecdotes. So when I was in grad school, I published a paper in JRSSB, and I remember calling my mom. And my mom, she doesn't know statistics. Like, she has no idea what JRSSB is. But I called her and I'm like, Mom, I got this paper accepted in this very important journal. And what this means is that no matter what happens to me in this life, I will always have published a paper in JRSSB. And I was like, this is it. Like, I have whatever happens from here on out, I will always be a person who's published a JRSSB paper. And I was very proud. And then a few years later, I was writing a paper with a co-author, and we had to make we sent it to JRSSB. They asked us for revisions, and I just felt like my co-author wasn't taking it as seriously as I thought they should have. And my co-author actually at the time was a new parent, and I was just not impressed. I remember telling someone, I was like, anybody can become a parent. Not everybody can publish in JRSSB. And like, truly, I wasn't trying to be funny or ironic. Like, that was truly how I felt at the time. Maybe 12 years ago, that like, yeah, becoming a parent, whatever, but like, there's lots of parents out there. Everyone in the world, all 7 billion people have parents, but not everybody has a JRSSB paper. So I just wasn't very impressed at what I viewed as my collaborators allocation of energy. And so now here I am years later, and I'm one of the joint editors of JRSSB. And what I've learned is that while it's an honor to be a joint editor of JRSSB, and publishing in JRSSB is great, like, it has nothing on actually being a parent. So here are my 3 kids on the first day of school this year. And I can tell you, publishing in JRSSB is a lot easier than having 3 kids. And also in terms of like how meaningful my life accomplishments are, being joint editor of JRSSB is a less meaningful life accomplishment to me than having a family. So I just, it's important to have fun. It's important to prioritize your personal life as well as your professional life, because at the end of the day, your papers aren't going to love you, and neither will your CV. And so this is my little appendix, which is my greatest accomplishments. This is my family visiting London last year. So yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Daniela and Michael. Yeah, very, great, very insightful experience. Yeah, I just want to say that I've been following your articles at Witten by Witten. Yeah, very inspiring. Well, so let's move on to the next stage, maybe moderating and Q&A. So I have some prepared questions. And after that, maybe we can open the questions to the audience. First of all, may I ask you, what are the pros and cons of focusing on the statistical theory methodology versus more interdisciplinary research when aiming to have a significant impact. And another is how to difference in focusing funding and authorship order influence the success of such collaboration.
I heard the last part of the question. How does the what affect the
Yeah.
success of the, yeah.
So from my view, from my observation, statistical theory, for example, more theoretical papers are usually the authorship and the funding and focus will be very different from interdisciplinary research. And how will that difference will influence the success of the collaboration?
Yeah, so I'll just take the last part of the question on authorship. So it's definitely true that in like statistics, usually, well, not always, but often in statistics, the senior author will be last, and then like the person who did most of the work, whether it's a grad student or a postdoc or potentially a senior person as well, will be first. But different people in statistics do it different ways. Like some people prefer alphabetical order, although I notice that some people who prefer alphabetical order also happen to have last names at the beginning of the alphabet. But I'll say, by contrast, like for example, in biology, it's really unambiguous. Like the senior author is always the last author, and that's the person who funded the work. And I don't know, I've never gotten too caught up in the question of authorship order, because what I really want is like a collaboration that feels fun, that I want to keep doing, so that I want to write a lot of papers with that person. And that's more important to me than like my authorship on any particular paper. But I will say also, I need to feel that things are fair. And if I feel like there's some kind of unfair treatment, then that would make it for me feel like a non-tenable collaboration that I'm not enjoying, that I wouldn't continue. But I do want to just share like one anecdote about what I do in terms of authorship when I'm writing a statistics paper, because I've told a lot of people about this, and I do think it works really well. So I have some long-term statistical collaborators, like either in my department or in other departments, who I've written a lot of papers with. And often there'll be a student or a postdoc who's the first author, and then it'll be me and then this other statistician, senior statistician, and we have to figure out which of our names goes last. And what we do, and I have like multiple relationships like this, where this is just what I've worked out with the other person, is we alternate last authorship. So like for example, I have a colleague, Jacob Bian at USC, and we write a lot of papers together. And we don't even like have a conversation about who's going to be last author on this paper. We just check our previous paper, and if I was last author on the previous one, then he's last author on this one, and vice versa. And I really recommend a system like that, so that there's not like drama in authorship, um because that way we can just like enjoy the process of working together, and we're not trying to like figure out like who contributed incrementally more, so that that person can get more credit on the authorship list.
Those are great points. I agree with that strategy. I want to say we do things a little bit differently, since I do a little bit more. Well, you may do this as well, but a lot of my students do work in biostatistics, or where they might actually author a paper that goes to a more clinical journal, as well as a paper that goes to statistical journal. And so even our statistical papers often involve a lot of collaborators that are not statisticians, because of the data and other things that we use. And so what I tell my students is that, you're going to be first author. So if you have like 35 authors in between, you still get full credit for being first author. Because there are some places where the people worry about, if I'm like have a lot of papers, they'll divide my contribution by the number of authors. There have been places that actually do that. I think that's no longer the case. But I do like the system for handling senior authors. I will say that what I do now, and maybe I don't know, it's because I'm senior enough, I will actually just if somebody else wants to be senior author, I'll just let them, because, or even if they don't want to, but I think they could be, their contributions were kind of like joint. I want to encourage them, because I don't really need more senior author papers, nor more first author papers. I mean, I need them because I like to do the research, but I think there are different stages in your career and you do different things. I think fairness is the best overall value, like Daniela said, and making sure that that students and postdocs, whoever leads the work in terms of is first author. There was a funny little thing that went on for a while where if you are a senior faculty and you are not first author on papers, you get in trouble. But years ago, at least biostatistics here and other departments I know of, put the rule in that if you're a senior author and somebody and a student of yours or a postdoc that you mentor is first author, you get first author credit if you need to keep track of first author credit for promotion and so on. And so we actually, when I review other cases, I always check to see if they're students. And to me, that counts at least as much, in some cases more, because if you can supervise a student to do good work, you are showing indication, I think, of maturing as a mentor and researcher.
Thank you, Michael and Daniela, for your comments. Yeah. So may I ask you a next question is about the collaboration across different fields? Yeah, because you are both so great about them. Yeah. And can you give us an example of a project where collaboration between statisticians and the domain scientists was crucial to its success, and what leadership qualities are essential for fostering such productive interdisciplinary collaboration?
I have a scary story I can tell.
Oh,
So I'm working on this project, this funding set of grants the NIH provide called Backpack. It's for addressing the opioid epidemic, and the focus of our grant is on helping to control back pain. Much of the funding was used to create a multi-center clinical trial. And so we actually designed that here at UNC. Me and the student were the primary designers and sample size calculators and analysis planners. And this study is going to involve over 650 completers. It's a SMART design, so there's 2 stages of treatment. We'll have to use reinforcement learning. The primary aim is actually a dynamic treatment regime. And so this will actually recommend clinical treatment for lower back pain. And it's been very exciting. We're about to finish up all the patients we're about done with the whole trial and collecting all the data, and we'll begin doing the final analyses. Well, those will take several years, but we'll start the process. But I would say midway, I don't know, several months ago, just to give you the scope of this involves 13 plus centers. Each of those centers may have 6 to 8 people involved, and there's a bunch of statisticians. And we have been talking and trying to communicate well, but something happened in this group where we were kind of having difficulty figuring out what the primary analysis was actually going to be. And we were all confused over in our group here because all this was written in the planning of the trial. Everything was very clear. And later we learned that the issues were about the words and the communication. And they didn't surface until we're getting really close. It had to do with terms like when you talk about a dynamic treatment regime, they worry about the insurance companies making them do this treatment regime. And so we had to modify things. This is a suggestion. You're right. We have confirmation things we have to do down the road. And we worked with them, and we actually arrived at different analyses that we still were doing a dynamic treatment regime, but it met their communication goals and their needs in the field. But there was a period where there was extreme tension between these groups. And all of us just had to take a breath and realize we all want to be successful. Let's see if we can understand what's going on. So I think that collaboration can work well, but as you get more and more people involved, dynamics get more and more chaotic. And it's important to stay calm and see if you can understand what the concerns are of the people you're working with when you hit a barrier like this. So there, and things worked out. As you can tell, I'm still alive. So.
yeah, thank you. Yeah. Daniela, you have anything to share? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say, one thing that's really important for me is, again, like, research should be fun, because otherwise, why are we here? And so that really has motivated the choice of collaborations that I've engaged in and which collaborations I've stuck with. So sometimes I'll work with someone on something and we'll write a paper, and then I'm like, okay, like we're good. I don't want to pursue like a decades long collaboration with that person because, for whatever reason it isn't something that I want to do. And I think that's okay, right? It's nice to have the flexibility that you can sort of choose which collaborations you do and don't want to pursue. But I'll also say the collaborations that I've been engaged in, and often sometimes even less formal than a collaboration, often even just conversations with scientists, have really informed my methodological research in a very meaningful way. Like at the beginning of my career, my work was really about like high dimensional regression, and that was very much motivated by the collaborators that I had when I was a grad student at Stanford, like collaborators in the med school who I met through my PhD advisor, who basically just like wanted to be fitting predictive models for all sorts of things using gene expression data. And then more recently, in the last 4 years, um, I've become very interested in problems in selective inference, and that's very much from talking to scientists in both genomics and neuroscience who know that they have a problem when they're using the same data for both parameter selection and inference, but they don't exactly know how to solve it. And so I would say like the collaborations have value in and of themselves for the output that they um for the papers that come out of them, but for me more important than that is the fact that my statistical methods agenda is very much motivated sometimes by these conversations, not necessarily by the entire collaboration, but from hearing about how people think about their data and what problems they're facing. So that is very valuable to me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniela. Yeah, for sharing your experience. Seems that both Michael and Daniela probably spend a lot of time talking with the domain scientists and to understand their problem, and then those problems gives back to statistics and motivations and to develop a method and theory, and those experiences are really inspiring. May I ask you another question? Yeah, probably that's my last question before the open forum. So about the skill sets for theory and application. Do you believe that different skill sets are needed or required to be successful in working on theoretical problems versus applied scientific inquiries? What skills are essential to comfortably work on both domains?
I'll take this one first. I mean, first of all, like sometimes I meet people and they're like so strong in theory and it's incredible. And like they can just have a really amazing career as theorists. And sometimes I'll meet people and they're such strong applied statisticians and like that's wonderful because they can have great careers as applied statisticians. So I just want to say I don't personally think that being at the interface of theory and applied is better than just being a theorist or just being applied. I think that everybody should play to their strengths. And depending on what your strengths are, you may find that you naturally have a focus on one or the other. Um, and of course, each one involves different skill sets, which are equally valuable. But what I will tell you is that there is some commonality in terms of what leads to success, whether you're a theorist or an applied person. And I will say one of them is maybe the most important for me is just being a really, really clear communicator. And we can think about this in terms of like a paper. Like you can write a paper, and if you didn't communicate the ideas clearly, it might not even make it to peer review or the reviewers might reject it. But let's say you get lucky and you wrote a paper unclearly, like it's just not well written, but you get lucky and so it gets published anyway. Like that's not the paper that people are going to cite. What's going to happen is that 2 years later, someone else is going to publish a paper that has the same idea that you had, but written more clearly. And then that's the paper that's going to get 500 or 5,000 citations. So the advice that I'll give to everyone is like, it's awesome that you have all these technical skills that allow you to be a really strong researcher, whether in theory or in application. But sometimes what I advise someone is focus like a little less on your technical skills and focus a little bit more on improving your communication skills and in particular your written communication skills because you could have just, the world's best technical skills, but if you're not able to write your paper in an interesting way that's clear and that really communicates the story, and I do think of writing a paper as like telling a story. Like, what is the story that you're telling? Like, how can you make the story interesting and clear and compelling? If you're not able to do that, then it'll make it hard to publish your work. But even if you do publish it, people aren't going to read it at the same level that they would have if you had written the story better. And I think this is true regardless of whether you're an applied person or a theorist or at the intersection of the two.
I think that's really good advice. I feel some people are better at communication than others, and then some other, but it's important to value that. It's um, it's how you communicate and tell your story. I also wanted to say that curiosity can kind of help guide you, because that's kind of a window into what your mind is really has a lot of potential to do. And so listen to curiosity. And I speak from personal experience when I say that sometimes something you're curious with in an area may be really difficult and require a lot of time on your part to learn necessary ingredients to be able to participate in that area of research. But I feel that maybe not every such opportunity, but a few of those are really valuable and important to follow through on. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not going to be something you'll become really good at. And so I have a story that I wrote in the IMS bulletin about this subject that you guys can look up if necessary. I can point to the issue if I can figure out which one it was. But I do feel that that's something important to think about.
Thank you. I just want to continue to the last question. A lot of what we do actually were actually shaped by our trainings, graduate trainings. What kind of advice would you give to our trainees or young mentors of trainees on how can we become more well-rounded statisticians that can spot good statistical problems from collaborations and develop good theories or methods?
First, Michael, or should I take it?
I can go ahead and take this because I think it's a really hard question. As Daniela mentioned, I think there's something to think about with identifying our strengths. And it's not necessarily things that are easy for us, but things we're drawn to that we can work on and improve on. And so helping students find their best selves, helping encourage them when they struggle in one area and they learn that they're not really, it's not for them. Help them know that they're not broken, and none of us are. We're there. We have to find the sort of things that are good for us and learn those things. Because I've never found a student that didn't have something that they were really good at, and once you find that, help them achieve. And in our own career, I think it is important to shore up areas that are weak, but don't try to be everything. I think if you put too much pressure on yourself, it can be very, very stressful. Just learn and observe. And as Daniela Witten said earlier, keep at it. And you'll get better at it as you go along and listen to people. Allow yourself room for improvement, allow yourself room to make mistakes and to have bad days and bad weeks. You're going to have those if you're a normal person. And they're part of the career trajectory.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Yeah, there's the other part of it that I'll say is like, as a mentor, we think about like what can we offer our students and or our trainees in general. And sometimes it's like technical things, like we can help our students through the technical parts that they might be struggling with. But I would say more often than not, the thing that we can offer is sort of like a big picture understanding of like how this work fits into the field or how to tell the story in a way that's going to have maximal impact or whatever. Because the truth is, like, my students come in, they are so technically strong. They have taken all these courses that are just like very contemporarily relevant, often on topics that, like, frankly were not covered when I was in grad school because maybe their importance wasn't quite as clear at that time. um and like, of course, yeah, like you try to guide your students technically, but I think that guiding my students in terms of like figuring out like what is the message of this paper, um how do we craft this paper in a way that is going to be appealing so that it's going to really, its contributions are going to shine through. Like, that is something that isn't taught in classes and that I can really offer my students, and that is a lot of the mentoring I focus on, is helping them learn to do that on their own.
Thank you very much, Daniela and Michael. Well, so maybe it's time for us to turn to the questions at the open discussion forum and Q&A. There is a question for tenured associate professors considering university leadership roles in their near-term future. What key insights or advice from your own leadership journey could you share?
Well, I could just say one thing. Make sure that the person that is your supervisor is supportive, and that you have a supportive setting, because I feel one of the things that worked really well for me was having a very supportive dean when I was department chair, and then people in the department who were willing to help me as well. And because it's very hard to do most leadership without having support from somebody. And you want to provide a supportive network, but having a place where you know that your dean and other people are going to be supporting you, I think is really important. And I say that mostly because I've seen a lot of situations of friends and others who had not that situation happen, and all sorts of things can be problematic. And so maybe that's really super obvious, but you want to look for the environmental cues. How are other department chairs treated? Or other people doing what you're describing? And sometimes you're in a difficult situation. There's nothing you can do with it, but you want to help. Make sure that you have your own internal support and you have a way to make it through any difficult difficult issues that come up, that you have somebody you can talk to, somebody who can support you. I know I'm kind of being a little negative, but I feel that it is important to have that support. A leader is not just made by just suddenly deciding you're a leader and all the power is there and you just can do a good job. It involves other people you work with, and they can help set the tone for your leadership, and you can help set the tone for their leadership success.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I'll just add like another angle to it, which is like just because someone asks you to take on a leadership role, or just because you see a role that you feel someone ought to take, doesn't mean it has to be you. There's going to be more opportunities for leadership over the course of your career than you can reasonably take. And so you can just, like hold out and see if this is the right opportunity for you. And if it's the right opportunity for you now, it also might be the right opportunity in 5 years. And I'm just saying this from the perspective that when I first got tenure, I took on a lot of things. And then I realized I actually had to like slow my roll a little bit because it was too much. And so you don't need to rush into all the things. Someone told me something funny recently that I can't get out of my head, which is that there's two types of people. There's people who are good at being journal editors and people who are good at being department chairs. And of course, that's an oversimplification, and plenty of people like Michael are good at both. But I think it is also telling, though, that you don't need to take every leadership role. Like you can just choose a subset and choose the ones that speak to you, that seem like they'll be the most rewarding and that will play to your strengths.
Can I add to that? Because I think she brought such a super good point. That is that, yeah, not every opportunity, but there are probably times when it really, you shouldn't take on a leadership. If you're still building your research portfolio, you shouldn't jump to a chair or other things. You'll have other opportunities, as Daniela said. So not only choose wisely, but choose when wisely too. And it may be that sometimes you just need to wait for certain things to come into place, or to say, you just need to prioritize so you get the things that you need done in your career, because those are the very important. Leadership is sort of something you do as a second thing to your overall career,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I agree with that. And then another angle too, there is like, I don't know, in my experience, I saw it with myself, and I've seen it with friends of mine. Often you get tenure and people are like, oh, like here's 10 leadership roles we want you to take on. And it's just worth thinking about, like, why were they so eager to give you that role? Like maybe it's because nobody else was willing to do it. And so you should just, just like look carefully around and think about this leadership opportunity that I'm being offered. Who else did they ask first? And was that person smarter than me because that person said no? And of course, some of the leadership opportunities that come your way are going to be incredible, meaningful opportunities. But since you're not going to be able to do all of them, it's worth being very selective and maybe critically appraising the ones that do come to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the inspiring answers. There are some more questions. As a biostatistics faculty member, I've noticed that most students are reluctant to study theories and write theoretical papers because the time investment required. Many students, particularly those interested in machine learning and AI, often perceive that learning statistical theory and mathematics is less important. What's your thought on this? How can we adjust our courses or mentoring to better bridge the gap between the theory and application in our curriculum?
I think that everybody has their strengths and their interests. And I would say if there's a student who isn't very interested in learning statistical theory and mathematics, then like God bless, there's a lot of research and career opportunities that are more on the applied side. And I'll say I also see a lot of students who have zero interest in application and they only want to do theory and mathematics. And like that's great too. There's room for all types of people. What I have found is not successful is taking a student who has one set of interests and trying to force them to work on a project that's outside of their interests. You really want to help people play to their strengths rather than um, having them do the set of things that you want them to do.
I think that's extremely good advice. I also want to say that along with that, it's important to examine the reasons for why a person may not like something or another. If it's because they think other people are really fast at it, but they're really curious about it. So I've had students who were interested in theory, but they felt, unworthy because other people were faster at it, or so they thought. Only to, after exploring, realizing that they're really, really good at it. They just needed to understand that working on hard theory, it's hard for everybody, not just them, and be able to not label themselves as not capable. And so I think it depends on the reasons that a person chooses one thing or another. But if it's really the skill set that they're playing to, I think that's the right way to do it. But sometimes we have a lot of people that have experiences in the educational system that make them hesitant to do something just because of the way the teachers didn't support them or whatever. And I feel it's good to kind of get those cleared up too sometimes.
Thank you. Next question, as a PhD candidate, how does one deal with paralysis, that impedes research and writing papers? Wow. And that's a tough question.
I think it's really personal. And I encourage you, if you find yourself in that situation, to find resources near you, whether it's a dissertation coach or a cohort of other students, either in your department or in other departments in the university, who all decide to like have dedicated writing time together every Wednesday afternoon or whatever, whatever it is. Like you got to find a way to um, make yourself productive and motivated, and you don't need to do it alone. You can take advantage of the resources around you. Often those resources I think are going to be very local.
I really like that idea. I just want to add that something that I've been doing lately in the last several decades of my career is trying to set up a lab environment where students can feel a social connection to support each other during their ups and downs. And I try to let it run its own. I mean, I tried to get it organized, but I quickly realized it's better to have them organize themselves around what they wanted and needed to do. And I found that is really, the students have felt a lot of support um, for various things like programming errors with simulations. We have a lot of those discussions. That's just another idea, is a lab-like structure, either as a young faculty member creating one, with even just a few students, can be a good thing, something to consider.
Yeah, due to the time constraints, maybe let's quickly go over the next two questions. How do you communicate in a way to make sure your message is heard by non-statisticians and influence them without authority? And the previous question, how would you advise junior faculty members on the balance between theory and applications? This question is especially relevant for people with a soft money position where they have to publish theory papers and get tenures, also establish collaboration to cover the efforts.
I think I'll say to both of those questions, like again, you got to play with to your strengths. You've got to do the things that you enjoy, and at the end of the day, um, you know, maybe you'll find that the way to play to your strengths and the set of things that you enjoy is different from what you're doing now. And then that's a sign that you should do something different.
I think that's, yeah. The thing I would add is that you can also, even if you may not be able to change your opportunities for research right away, you can gradually work on the type of projects you have to do for grant funding and make them more and more in line with your interests over time. That's kind of how I did it as a young researcher. It's not necessarily the most efficient way. The other thing is I learned I had to take time. If I had to do a lot of stuff for supporting other researcher that was assigned to me or teaching duties, I always had to learn how to carve out time to do the things I really wanted to have my career be the substance of, and deliberately. So you don't want to just be a victim of what opportunities come your way, but you want to manipulate it so that you can more and more move in the direction you want.
All right, thank you so much, Daniela and Michael, and also I want to thank the audience for your listening. If you find our conversation to be helpful, please share the recording with your friends, your trainees, and your colleagues. I want to especially thank you behind those scenes, Maureen Crawford, Jessica Lee, Amita Manatunga, and Megan Glean. I just want to say that our next event will be on November 26th, 2024. Speakers will be Stephen Andrew Culpepper from UIUC and Sandeep Singhara from ETS. And the moderator will be Gongjun Xu from University of Michigan. The topic will be leadership at the intersection of statistics and psychometries. And stay tuned for more events like this from the COPSS-NISS leadership webinar series. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Anru.
Bye.